I am, your brother in Christ. So today's topics will be covering multiple ones. The first one is socialized healthcare, or healthcare for all. Kind of how you want to look at it. So I want to talk about this definitely because it's a hot topic as far as the election coming up in 2020. Is this something we should go down? Should we pursue socialized healthcare or universal healthcare, or whatever, one payer healthcare, whatever they want to say about it? They seem to switch names faster than I changed my underwear. So, that's not a good hygiene statement, but say la vie. So socialized healthcare. What are the pros and cons of it? Being able to have basically one healthcare that covers everything everywhere. That's their major pro as far as I could see. It being free, which means everyone else actually pays for it, and so do you through your taxes. Now, I already pay 30% in my taxes. Sorry about that. I pay 30% of my taxes, and that, I mean, how much more do you need? Because I'm self-employed, so I'm in my own little tax bracket, and it's not nice. So how much more blood do you want the government to take at gunpoint? I mean, the government is literally taking this at gunpoint. I was in a discussion not too long ago. It was actually a customer of mine. We were talking about healthcare, and he's very pro socialized healthcare. I don't see it as being a good thing in any way, shape, or form. I see it as being a bad thing. We'll talk about why here in a little bit. His main points, though, was don't you want to be able to help people? This would help so many people. The problem is this is also going to harm a lot of people in order to get us into this. And has this actually functioned? I think the biggest point he had was the governments that currently have socialized healthcare, do they go back to just normal? They could elect it in there. So that was his major standing points. We have such places like Canada that have healthcare like that, socialized healthcare. What about Sweden? These other places, and they're not going back. They could go back to the way we're doing it, but they obviously choose not to. Therefore, it can't possibly be any worse. There's some issues with that, and I kind of pointed out. Have you ever known a government to willingly give up control? There are some rare occasions of that happening, but not many would give up. Definitely if they have a lot of money in this deal. So I didn't see that standing up too well to scrutiny because, not the best. So, but the next statement is, since don't you want to help people? Aren't we supposed to help people? I mean, there are plenty of verses in the Bible that says we're supposed to help people. But there's a big difference from socialized, anything that is government run, government dictated to you. Because the government's telling you, this is what we're going to cover. And I tried to get them onto the topic of who defines that. Who really defines what needs to be covered and what doesn't need to be covered, what's optional, what's free, and what's not. And he was not getting on that because I asked him about transgender. Would the transgender surgery be government provided? Would I have to pay to provide this, what I see as just mutilation of one's own body, or in the case of children being forced into this, manipulation of parents in order to virtue signal or show that they're so virtuous that they allow their kid to choose their gender, because we allow kids to make life-changing decisions all the time. I mean, that's why we have 2-year-olds driving. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So that's where it would really define. Who would define it? It would be the government or the mob whoever has the loudest voice and can get the biggest following will then determine what can be given as free and what you have to pay as the taxpayer to actually support this. Now, I'll give it to Bernie Sanders. At least he comes out and says, yes, everyone's going to have to pay for this. At least he's not trying to lie on this topic anymore. He's full out coming out and saying it. So I pointed that out. He dismissed it as being just slippery slope. That's a slippery slope argument. Well, guess what? Slippery slopes exist. They happen. I remember the Boy Scouts. I told them this is slippery slope. You change your foundational beliefs in order to accommodate peer pressure. Then they are going to come back at you again and again and again and continue to change you until you are no longer what you once were. Yes, that's a slippery slope argument. Yes, it was completely and utterly valid, and I was right, unfortunately. Unfortunately. I had to give up that position because I was right in that regard, which sucked. So, that being a slippery slope argument, yes, we could eventually get to that point. No, there's no way of being able to prevent that from happening with socialized healthcare. His next statement is, well, don't you just want to help people? Don't you want to just help everyone and help people? Yes, I want to help people. I don't want the government to tell me that I have to help people. There's a slight difference. There is, someone comes to me that I know personally and they're going through a hard time. They just got diagnosed with cancer. They need help. Okay, I can then help. Sorry, my wife just came in, so I had to see if she needed something. But I can then decide to help them. And as far as community goes, as far as outreaches or nonprofit organizations, I'm fully behind that. My wife and I support Compassion. We are literally supplying enough money to keep basically help a kid out to get the education and eventually be able to pull himself out of poverty. But we are choosing of our own free will to do that. The government did not dictate to my wife and I that we had to take this kid from the middle of nowhere in some backwater nation and help him get the education, food, and support he needs in order to be successful in this world. We did not get dictated by the government that we had to do that. That was of our own free will, and we love doing it. It's fantastic to do it. I'm grateful to be able to do it. But the difference between that and the government saying, oh, you got to do it, is I'm no longer being generous. I'm just following the rules. I'm just being a robot, just doing exactly what the government says to do. So I said, no, I don't want to do it if it's going to be at gunpoint. And he gave the statement I've heard so many times whenever I pointed that out. He said, oh, no. There's not going to be guns. There's going to be no. People are not going to show up at your house with guns. That's just a falsitude. So I said, okay. This is going to be part of taxes that I have to pay in order to support this. So what happens if I decide not to pay a portion of my taxes? What happens? The response is, well, you get a fine. My next statement is, what happens if I do not pay the fine? Then I will get a bigger fine. And what happens if I refuse that one? The police would show up at my door to go to court. Well, actually, it'd be a court summons. And then if I ignore that, then the police would show up at my house. And what do the police have? They have guns! So, yes, I skipped all the middle step and got to the end. Which is, people show up at my door with guns if I refuse to pay this. So they are literally forcing me to pay for other people's health care at the point of a gun. Very basic logic to follow to find that out. And thus, I don't like that. I don't support that. That makes no sense to me. Sometimes, yes, you end up with bad health conditions, bad situations that are at no fault of your own. You know what? Some of the health conditions are your fault. Life choices, you decide to not eat healthy, you decide to go out drinking all the time, you decide to shoot up and do drugs, which is something that happens quite a bit and costs taxpayer dollars. It costs us taxpayers millions of dollars just because of drug use alone. Not so much fighting it, but even the emergency calls, the medical bills, all of that end up adding up to a large amount out of the taxpayer dollar. And on top of that, you want to now completely support anyone's lifestyle, let it be druggy, let it be prostitution, anything like that, at our expense. The hard-working men and women of America who legally follow all the rules and are smart and wise with their money and are careful about their health, make sure they're healthy, make sure they go out, work out, make sure they get the exercise that their body needs. You are now requiring them to pay and support someone who is not. No questions asked. You just get this. No sense. Now, our healthcare system could be improved. There are many things we could do, tweaks to the system that we currently have, in order to increase, just be able to work better and be more productive. But I don't think we need to throw the baby out with the bathwater either. I think we have a very good application. I think there are some major fixes we could do to the health system, such as making it known what you're paying for things. I mean, if I go into a hospital, I don't know what, if I go in just for diabetes check if I have diabetes or not. I don't know how much that's going to cost me. I don't know how much the test is going to be. I don't know how much it's going to be for a doctor to come in and give me a single report. I don't know how much it is. It's a big black box. And the worst part of it is, even if you ask people there that work there, they don't know. They don't know. It's a black box that even they don't know about. Imagine if you applied that to any other business. Wendy's. You walk into Wendy's, you want to order yourself lunch, and they have all these meals up there, all these selections you can do, but no prices. And they refuse to tell you. No one knows how much you're going to pay. You won't even know until after you've already purchased it, said you're going to pay for it, no matter what amount it is, sat down, ate your food. A month, 2 months later, you get a bill in the mail for whatever money they believe they should charge you. That's bad. Not even the doctors know what they're what they're charging their patients. Even the best doctor doesn't necessarily know that. Now, if you go to like urgent care clinics, those I really like because they're upfront with what they charge. The others, not so much. They really are not. So those are some of the ways that we can improve our health care. But to socialize it, to dictate it, is not only a bad idea. It is against the very fundamentals of Christianity. Whoa. I know what I said was just really out there. It's against the fundamentals of Christianity? What are you talking about? We're supposed to help people, right? Yeah, we're supposed to help people individually. We're supposed to choose individually to help people, not just give it over to the government, let them help people. We just live in our own little world and let the government help people. No, we are to help people. And the reason why it's fundamentally any sort of socialized fill in the blank is fundamentally against Christianity is because it comes on the simple assumption that if the government were to take care of humanity, humanity is inherently good by itself. If you remove every other aspect, if you remove money from it, if you remove everything, humanity is inherently good, and you're going to have perfect people who then run the socialized healthcare. And as Christians, we know for a fact that's not true. We know that humanity is inherently corrupt in its current form. Since we've fallen in the garden, we are inherently corrupt. We are born that way. We are born into sin. And that's why we need a savior. That's why we need to be saved, is because we are born corrupt. That is why any sort of socialization will not work, because it goes off of a very flawed, basic, fundamental foundation of us being perfect if we only remove these certain elements. That foundation is cracked already. Even before you try to do anything, it's already cracked. The deck stacked against you. You cannot win with that. So, all boiled down, I think it came down to this. I said it should be left up to the individuals themselves, as well as non-charity organizations spread out. There are many of them. St. Jude is wonderful. I know Compassion is wonderful. There are a lot of corruption, though, in those organizations as well. Not so much the ones that I mentioned, but some of them really do only give a very small portion to whatever you're giving to, where a lot of it just goes in the pocket of either the owners or investors in that group. That being said, yes, there is corruption. Absolutely. He was right about that. My only standpoint is, when has the government done something right when it's run? Something that involves money. When has the government not been corrupt? The answer is not. Look at the Postal Service. The Postal Service itself is a great example of this, because for the longest time the Postal Service was the only way to send mail. And then you had FedEx come up, and then it started getting competition. It started to enter into the free market sort of model that we have. And since then, we've got tracking numbers, we've got better delivery. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, you send a letter to my grandparents, which they lived half an hour away from us. And it would get there 3 to 4, 5, 6 days, whenever it got there. Now you send it and it's going to get there pretty soon. It doesn't take nearly the time it used to. On top of that, if you send a package, then you have tracking, you have insurance, and these were things that weren't given originally, when it was the only thing that you could do is just send it through normal mail. They were the only ones running it. So that is really where it comes down to. Do you think the government would be capable of running an organization that you're dealing with thousands and thousands of dollars with a whole lot of people that are needed to run it without there being large-scale corruption in it? Do you really think that could be the case? Or would opening it up to a free market platform where the prices are visual, everyone can see what the prices are, there's nothing hidden behind closed doors, you know exactly what you're going to pay before you even start the surgery, would that be better? Or you could go to the clinic down the street and get the same surgery for less or more, depending on what the prices are. So opening up to free market, I believe, would be much better. So that is the thoughts of socialized healthcare. That's why it's anti-Christian at its core. It is going on that false fundamental belief that all Christians already know is wrong. So you cannot have Christian beliefs and believe that socialization will work. They are incompatible ideologies.
Let's move on to the next one, shall we?
Thank you guys for joining me for that.